You start.
Crabmeat,
Hey, George.
where are you from?
Wilmington. I was born in Philly, but Wilmington. I grew up in Wilmington.
What high school did you go to?
Brandywine.
Oh, Brandywine.
Brandywine, yeah.
When did you graduate?
63.
63.
No, 62.
62.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what got you interested in music?
I always sang. And at first I was singing. The first stuff I sang was like Billy the Kid and cowboy songs, Tex Ritter, and all that stuff.
When you were a young kid?
When I was a little kid, yeah. I still love that stuff. It was beautiful music, yeah.
And so who was your musical interest after Tex Ritter?
Well, just everything. When I got into high school, at that time, we were still dancing to Glenn Miller in gym class. And then, like the next year, they had Danny and the Juniors with the hop.
What year was this?
This was when I was like
In junior high school.
This was when I was like in junior high, yeah, and they were teaching us to dance. And so I went from Glenn Miller to Danny and the Juniors, which was like much more physical because you did the bop and you jumped up and down when you did that. And then they had all different dances. And then along came Chuck Berry and invented rock and roll. And all these great, great, great songs, which were about teenage angst and cars, and rock and roll, and eating in diners, and all that great stuff.
Well, great. Look, and how do you describe your music? Since you're not a band right now.
No, I'm not a band. Real perverted, texturally messed up. No, I do a wide variety, and so it's always been hard to figure out where to put me in a record store, and that's a real liability,
Right.
actually,
Right.
because they always want, the record industry wants to narrow you down and put you here, and if they can't figure that out, it's
So did you ever make it to the disco part of the music?
When disco started out, I was living in San Francisco, and it was gay music. And then when I came back here, I saw everybody's dancing to gay music. That's great. And John Krugel is gay, But the thing is, it's still around. It didn't die. We wanted it to die, and it didn't die. But
People next door trying to study.
oh, okay.
So how did you?
Normal.
How'd you get to San Francisco? And what year was that?
Okay, so I went to graduate school and started teaching at Western Illinois University, and then I went to Oregon State because I wanted to go to Oregon.
Well, what college did you graduate from?
I went to the University of Delaware and got extradited, and
Who'd you play football with?
Hmm?
Who'd you play football with?
I played football not with Joe Biden.
But that's not what I heard.
No, Joe Biden, for years he said that he played football for Delaware.
Right.
And then when Tubby Raymond died, the coach, when he died, we all went to Tubby Raymond's memorial service. And we all knew that Joe had never played for Delaware.
Because you actually did.
Yeah, because I actually did, and he played on the freshman team.
Oh.
So he got up there and he confessed. He says, "You guys, I gotta come clean." And he says, "I went to visit Tubby, and this is a good Delaware story. I went to visit Tubby, and he says, you've been saying you played for Delaware for years." And he says, "Well, I was on a freshman team." So Tubby retired his freshman jersey, and Joe took it down to Washington and hung it on his wall, his jersey that was retired, and he never told Joe didn't tell anybody it was his freshman jersey because he didn't have to.
All right.
So what position did you play in Delaware? What would?
The bench. I was on the bench, and I got into a couple of games, and but we won the national championship.
All right, Oregon. Now let's enough about football.
So he doesn't like sports. So we
No,
go.
I want to get back to music.
Okay,
People may be
so
interested.
I go off to. By this time, I was playing in places, and at that time, they had coffee houses, like lots of coffee houses with good crowds and things, and everybody would go to the coffee house.
Was this in Portland, Oregon, or?
Well, I started out in Illinois, and then I went to Corvallis, which was Oregon State.
Right.
And I played in pizza places, coffee houses, that sort of thing. And my students told me that I should be on stage because my classes were like overflowing, and we made so much noise that everybody complained. And so I took their advice, which was, no, you shouldn't listen to 19-year-old kids. But anyway, so I went after I got laid off because I didn't get my PhD. And so I went down to San Francisco with my girlfriend.
And what year was this?
That was about 73, 74. So I'm in San Francisco. I went to Blue Bear Waltz's College of Rock and Roll, which was run by Ed Denson, who was a Woodstock promoter guy who wanted to keep going. And he had Terry Garthwaite of The Joy of Cooking giving voice lessons, and she was my voice teacher. And she liked me. I should have kept connections like that. And then I went down to Big Sur because we went there on a weekend and just loved the place. So I went down there and I was cooking in Big Sur and playing music at nights in the River Inn. And I ran into a guy named Frank Shiverini, who was the first guy who ever wanted to form a band with me. And so we formed a duo, and when the season was over, we went up to Tahoe for the ski season. And we had a band with the wonderful name Rock Macho and the Country Felons. And I was Rock Macho, so they were all felons. They'd all been at least 5 years in prison, And we sang Merle Haggard and the Eagles, because country rock was the thing.
Right.
And so we did Eagles, Merle Haggard.
Hoka? Hoka?
Thank you.
Country rock?
Yeah, I guess we did.
The Birds?
I don't remember. The Birds, and also LSD. They had LSD at the bar.
Of course.
Where we played, because that was the era, And so that was fun. And then the band broke up, and I was driving a bus, and my buddy Al Wong, down in San Francisco, said that he needed to have his help with his master's thesis, which was about Chinese Americans. So I go down to San Francisco and actually wrote his master's thesis, and it was supposed to take 6 months, but we partied like every night, and every Thursday night we'd have a house full, and it was like a big folk music jam session. And it was truly wonderful for music development. But it took me a long time to write his thesis, a couple of years, and we had a lot of fun. And
Hold on, you never got your PhD, but you wrote somebody else's thesis?
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, if I write another one, I'm going to put my name on it. Because those are a lot of work. I brought it with me. But anyway, so I had to write it. And then the last chapter had to be the personal story from the point of view of a Chinese American. I said, Al, you have to help me with this one. So I've everything I know about Chinese Americans I've forgotten, unfortunately. But anyway,
Read the thesis.
So yeah, while I was there, the folk goddess was Kate Wolf. And so I was out at a folk music event, and I'm playing country. I'm playing Hank Williams songs, and this beautiful, beautiful voice starts harmonizing. It was Kate Wolf. So she got me on her radio show. She encouraged me to write songs and this and that because she liked my songs. And my girlfriend helped her make her second album. And then Kate went off and died, which is too bad. She's a beautiful woman. So then I was in Big Sur, and I came home on vacation, and Ted Zink offered me a job teaching law justice studies with an ex-con rehabilitation project at Glassboro State. Should I be looking at that?
Yeah.
Okay, I was kind of
You
mumbling
look
to
at
myself.
George or me. You look at me, actually.
Okay. No, I'm ready to look at George. Okay. But anyway,
Thank you.
So Ted and I became like best of friends. And then when he started his place in Wilmington,
Zinks.
yeah, he said, I'm looking at this place, and I want to start my own bar, but you got to play for me. You know, that was a stipulation. And Keneally says that he invented the place, but Ted asked me to play there, and I started playing there. I was the first one to play.
Where is it located? Where was it?
It's now Dead Presidents, or it was Dead
On
Presidents.
Washington Street, right across from the hospital, basically.
Yeah, the Y's here, the hospital, and those things. So it was a wonderful place.
No, that's not where Dead Presidents is. That's where Washington Street Ale House is.
Okay, you got it.
Washington Street Ale House is
Yeah,
where
yeah.
Zinks was.
Okay. So that was like a nice era, because then
And what year was that?
that was 1980 by this time, and 1978, 79, 70, 80, and because Zinks was so hot, and I was working with Bobby Ferrara, who was a sax player who played jazz all over the place, and I started playing with Bobby around town. And then he got me a job in the school where he was working. And my girlfriend worked there too. So I met Al Cartwright's wife. And I was the bouncer at this. It was a bad kid's school. And I was the bouncer. And so his wife said that I was protecting her.
So Al Cartwright was a news journal. Is that the guy I'm thinking of?
Oh, he was the guy. He was the man.
He was He was a columnist, an editorial, or a.
He wrote about people around Wilmington.
Right,
He
yes,
wrote
right.
personality pieces and looked for personalities to interview. So he took me out for beers, and we became great friends. Unfortunately, when he died, his family tried to get a hold of me, and to play at his funeral, and they couldn't find me for some reason. But anyway, he lived to be close to 100. A terrific guy. But he wrote this nice article about me, and I got all kinds of work. I was playing all over. And then, at that time, there were ethnic neighborhoods all over the place. There was Polish neighborhood on Maryland Avenue, and Black Club over here, and an Italian place over here, Irish place over in 40 Acres. And all those neighborhoods were like, people would go to their neighborhood pub. It was like Ireland, actually. It was your neighborhood place to check in. So I played in Ziggy's in the Polish neighborhood, played in Zink's, which was everybody, and Logan House, and all these different little places. And you didn't repeat yourself because they didn't go to the next neighborhood. They went to their own place. And then the yuppies from Greenville would come on field trips, and once in a while the motorcycle gang would come in. So it was really fun. I really enjoyed that.
The 80s were.
It was a good time, and you could walk around Wilmington late at night because there's so many people on the street.
Yeah.
It was safe.
They had the loops and all sorts of.
And Franny Naughton started the Loops, not the Out and About magazine.
Who's Franny Naughton?
Franny Naughton worked for the city, and he used to get a school bus and take people around to different places, and he would they rented roller skates one time, and they had me play on roller skates, which was kind of scary. And I was roller skating down Tatnall Street, playing music for the prostitutes, and it was great fun. But he got a bad reputation, and other people started doing it. He went to jail. So, well, he was a good guy.
He worked for the city of Wilmington in the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've never heard that name before.
Well, he was disgraced, a good guy that really got in hot water. So that's the 80s. So then I ran into Johnny Neal down in Milford where he was playing, and got to be friends with Johnny Neal. And I owe Johnny Neal because I said, Johnny, you're going to do this concert up at the Grand. Like, I could be your opening act because it's just me, man. All you got to do is you could test the mics out on me and do your sound check. I'll be your sound checking. Was that good Johnny imitation? Okay, so he says he thought that would be good, and his manager said, oh, okay, we'll use you to test the mics out. So what he ended up with, they said, what do you want us to pay? And I said, you're taping Johnny? Tape me. Give me the tape. Okay, fine. Well then, after that, Ward Camp from Bad Sneakers, which were my favorite rock band, and I played with him over at Mel's, which was out on Route 40, and Mel's had all the bands, and they had me doing happy hours. I don't think they had anybody else for happy hours. And I would hang around and party with Bad Sneakers and got to be friends with them. So then, like, a couple of them played backup stuff. After we got the tape master, we put down extra tracks, and Neil, from the drummer,
Tilson.
from Bad Sneakers, Neil Tilson, played drums. He whined like a little, it was terrible. but
Neil.
Yeah,
I'm sure he'll be watching this. Sorry, Neil.
he said it was hard to follow. It's hard for a drummer to follow the beat of. He wants to set the beat, and you follow him. So he had to follow somebody else for once in his little petty drummer life. Neil Tilson.
Oh, I'm tagging him on this video.
And now they're all Shane from that band is working with Mark Moss. They're coming out with a new CD pretty soon, and that's just great because they're really good guys. They were my favorite band. Unfortunately, Ward died.
I'm sorry, do you have that album with you that you made from that? Is that?
Yeah, that's in the bag here.
Yeah, let's see your bag of tricks here.
Okay, so this is the album, and so this is the album art, which I drew myself, and which was highly criticized by Dale Dallabrita, who later became my bass player, and I had to listen to him then too. But he made me draw this thing like 90 times, and I said, "Well, it's just a cartoon, man." But this is a marching animals, vegetables, and mineral springs. Animals were the teddy bears. I did the teddy bear picnic. That was one of my signature numbers. And it was great to do it when there was like a bloody fight, or people were, things were happening that were very inappropriate. Then you play the Teddy Bear's Picnic. The Vegetables was my song, the Night of the Marching Vegetables, about doing peyote in the Carson Valley with my friend Richie Reinhold. And Mineral Springs was about my song Hot Springs, which was about hot springs in Montana, but also went over very well in Florida, because my next stop, when this came out, and Ward killed himself, and I said, what am I going to do? I felt like I wanted to get out of town, and about that time, Jay Goodley, who was a friend of mine from high school, was a wrestling promoter in Sarasota. So he had been trying to get a hold of me to come down and play in Florida, because he was playing with rock bands, and he would like put on a leather mask and give out chains, and women would beat him with the chains and stuff like that. And so he says, "You got to come down. It's lots of fun." I said, "It sounds like my cup of tea," you know. So I go down, and by this time I had the album. So he promoted it all over the place, and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band gave it a review. They didn't do it, but they came around to see me and told me that they liked it. And what's her name? Lou Harrison. I used to go to parties at her house. She was George Harrison's sister, lived down there. So she would come to my gigs, and then I'd have to buy her drinks. Why do rich people always go out without their wallet? "Oh, I forgot my wallet." "Maybe it's in your car, Lou," you know. But anyway, she's a good gal. And but Goodley had all these contacts down there, wrestlers and sports figures, and which I can't mention because Mike would get angry.
So you went from football to being a wrestler?
No, I wasn't a wrestler.
Oh, okay.
But he announced me as a wrestler when I went to the matches. He would announce me, and then I would keep the time. And he also wrote a promo for me in the newspapers, and he gave me a PhD, which, you know, I told you I had missed it, and now I had it. But I screwed up down there because I had an affair with the gal that was in the newspaper that was his contact, and his best friend was running the newspaper, and she made a mess out of it, so I married her. I mean,
Charlotte?
Yeah. Did you meet Charlotte?
Yeah, I met her many times.
How long were you married to Charlotte?
A year and a half. It was like I was doing year and a half in Montana, you know. So, I skipped Montana. Yeah, while I was living in Wilmington, my old guitar player, Frank Shiverini from Big Sur, Tahoe band falls apart. Frank formed this group called the Livewire Choir, who were very, very successful. In a small way, they used to hang out with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and some other successful bands. And Frank called me and said that their lead singer had quit. Did I want the job? And I said, sure. And at the time I was giving up smoking. And I said, this is 1980 in Wilmington. Playing in bars in Wilmington, you can't give up smoking.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a good time because everybody smoked. They were the smokiest places in the world. Except for Mike, you smoked.
Did not smoke. No smoking.
You didn't.
So see the picture. See the picture you get ready.
So anyway, I played for a year and a half with the band in Montana. We did country swing. We did songs that I wrote, and Ray Charles songs, Van Morrison type songs, and songs that I wrote. I wrote half of our material. Had a great time. Traveled all over Montana, Canada, California. Played with Commander Cody, Asleep at the Wheel, Hoyt Axton, all kinds of people. Then Esquire came out and did a little story about us. Can you see that?
Hold on, let me zoom in here.
That's me. I'm holding my trumpet. I played trumpet with them for a while because everybody could play better guitar than me. So there was 5 guys that could play guitar, and so I said, well,
There you are. I
play
got
the
you.
trumpet. Okay, so there we are. That's 1982 Esquire, by which time the band had been broken up for a long time, and I was back in Delaware playing at the Rusty Rudder.
Hey, I have a question. Do you have? I assume that you're talking about all these songs. Do you have like a songbook? I mean, are these songs that are old songs that you never do anymore, or are they songs that I would know that you play all the time?
Well, the songs on this are Part of Me Misses You,
Right.
Teddy
Okay.
Bear's Picnic, which I don't do much. Everybody Hates Me Because I Never Have the Blues, Hot Springs,
Right.
An Alligator Shirt, which I don't do very much.
Okay, that's what I thought. There's no lost,
Small Wonder.
There's no lost Crabmeat, that you did with a country and western band that you never do anymore that you wrote.
Yeah, actually, I wrote a song when the first song that I ever wrote that anybody wanted to hear, I played with Frank Shiverini down in Big Sur, and he liked it, and he played mandolin on it, and it was called Thunder Bay, and it was about when I was in Oregon teaching at the university. I had the summer off, so I went up and I hitchhiked up to Vancouver, British Columbia, and then I hitchhiked across Canada and to Montreal and down to Philly. And when I got into Thunder Bay, which is up above Lake Superior, I think, in Canada, I couldn't get a ride. So I got on a freight train and I wrote a song about that.
Okay, so that's a song I've never heard you do.
Yeah, I think I'll toy with it and maybe revive it. But I wrote a story about it because it was interesting being up there.
All right, so now you're in Florida, and what's the year?
So we're going back to Florida.
Yeah, we're trying to
This is
chronologically.
like '84. I was down in Florida,
Yes.
and so when I came up the first summer that I was there, and we visited family. We went up to New Hampshire, see her family. I climbed Mount Jefferson. I ran up Mount Jefferson. Then, because it was getting dark. Then we went back down to Florida. I couldn't get work to save my soul. I was working at a gas station. I was doing all kinds of stuff. So then the next summer, I hooked up a whole bunch of gigs in Delaware and went up without my wife, flew up and stayed with friends, borrowed their car, and played all these gigs, made a lot of money, flew back to Florida, and my wife said she wanted a divorce. So I said, cool. She says, you should really go back to Delaware. You can't, you're just like not making it around here, and I'm sick of you and everything. And I said, do you have another man? And she says, oh, that's what my psychiatrist said. Of course she did, because I knew him, and when I went back down to visit, she was in his restaurant, and she liked him because he owned a restaurant. I knew what was going on. I'm not stupid. So I've written a song about that. It goes, when you told me it was over, I didn't know what to say. Packed the dog in the car and drove up to Dover, 1,000 miles all the way. Then I drove down to, you flew up to Baltimore, I drove down with the keys. You can have the damn car back, but the dog stays with me.
Sugar Lips.
Sugar Lips. Yeah, it's a song about Sugar
The
Lips.
dog.
My dog.
I knew Sugar Lips.
Speaking of names, how'd you get the name Crabmeat?
Oh, wait. I have to ask this question.
Why?
So, yeah, this is something that, a question that everybody wants to know when they meet you. And I've heard at least 5 or 6 different versions of
tell me more.
answers of this question. So personally, I think it is a marketing genius, branding, because
What's the best one?
Let me finish. Shaved head, and a name like that, and people, once they hear it, they remember it forever.
That's all it is.
So
It's a
here's
marketing scheme.
Here's the question: how did you get the name Thompson?
Thompson's actually, my ancestors came from Scotland, where the name was McTavish, and the McTavishes were part of the Campbells, but the Campbells lost the Battle of Culloden, and so they were trying to hide out, so they anglicized their name, which McTavish in English is Thompson.
I wasn't expecting a real answer to that question, but here's what I heard: that you were carrying out you were eating crabs, you were carrying out the trash. It got all over you. You smelled like crab meat.
They didn't have plastic bags back then. They hadn't invented plastic, so they had whatchamacallit?
Paper bags.
Paper bags, yeah. They had paper bags, and so I got 2 paper bags, and I'm sitting in an MG midget, and they're loaded with seafood and beer. So I get up out of the car, and it goes, and I didn't have any other clothing, so I smelled
Like crab meat.
like crab meat. Yeah, I mean, for God's sake, it was.
It stuck with you.
It stuck with me for those guys. Nobody else knew, but when I started being a folk singer, I said, "Oh, that's a good idea,"
Branding, I'm telling you.
Sure.
Genius.
How do you get the name Jerry?
That's not really his name.
That's not really my name. My parents. My parents decided on the name Jerry if I was a boy. And then my father went over to invade Normandy with the D-Day invasion. And my mother, she hadn't heard from him for months because there was censorship and radio silence and all that. And so she didn't know what was going on. She thought he was in Africa, I think. That's what they said. Because they had all that diversion going on. And so she didn't know if he was coming back, so she named me after him, George Walter Thompson Jr. And then my sister, when my folks died, she had to settle the estate, and she used George W. Thompson Jr., which by that time wasn't on any of my identification. I was Jerry Thompson. My sister's always, she's a terrible person. She's
I'm tagging her too. What's her name again? She on Facebook? Never mind.
people that age are not on Facebook. She's not on Facebook.
Okay. So you're not really Crab Meat, and you're not really Jerry. You're actually George.
Yeah. Well, now I'm George at work because the University of Delaware asked me as George. So everybody calls me George.
Fascinating.
That's all right. It's all right.
All right, more questions. Oh, wait a second. So now we're in the mid-1980s, and you're back in Wilmington. You're divorced from Charlotte, and...
Well, before that, though, when I was in Florida, I was playing the Hot Springs song, and I had this fiddler named Willie Royal, who later won a Grammy for world music. And he was this insanely good, bizarre sort of jazz, gypsy jazz, he called it, gypsy jazz fiddler. And he was really good. And he was playing with me in the Crow's Nest, where you went. Oh, yeah. And so he was playing with me, and I played Hot Springs, and somebody sends us drinks. So I said, thank you very much. And they were at the front table, and it was his mom and dad. So his father was Colonel William Royal, who had been a Navy frogman, lived at a hot springs, and he says, you got to come to our hot springs. So when I go over there, turns out that Bill Royal had not only ridden live sharks for bringing them up for cancer research, and I have pictures of him riding live sharks that he brought up they needed live sharks for cancer research. Oh, yeah. So he did that in his retirement, but then as a frogman, he started going down in this very deep sinkhole that went hundreds of feet down, and he found fossils, and he would bring them up and put them in his chimney that he built, in the cement. And he showed me all these fossils, and one of them was a 13,000-year-old human skull, which was the oldest human artifact found in North America to that time. And the archaeologist at the university in Tallahassee said that he didn't have the credentials to validate that. He was just some frogman. So the BBC came over and did a special on my friend, Colonel William Royal, and said that indeed he had found a 13,000-year-old skull. He'd even found brain tissue in there, but it disintegrated when he tried to bring it up. Because down that far,
No oxygen.
there's no oxygen. So
There's no sunlight.
There's no degeneration. Degeneration of tissue. So anyway, so that was really cool. So I come back to Delaware. When I got back to Florida, Charlotte had said she wanted a divorce. She goes off to work. The phone rings. It's my friend from Delaware, Jeff Dickey, lived in Dover. He says, Crabmeat, we miss you already. We wish you were here. And I said, okay, we'll put on some clean sheets. I'm coming. And I packed the dog, and I packed my guitar and my little bit of stuff, and took the car and drove up to Dover. Drove up to actually Clayton, where they lived, and I lived with them for about a year and a half. And then they decided they were going to start a family. I said, "Well, I guess I better leave," you know, which I did. It was good timing. And Jeff was the best man at my wedding, and his son Jared was our ring bearer, and his son.
This is another wedding?
Yeah, this is their wedding.
Oh, their wedding. Okay.
This is my third wedding.
Oh,
It's my third wedding.
well, we missed number 2.
No, you missed number one.
No.
Before Charlotte.
She got left in Oregon.
Oh,
No, she didn't get left. She left me in Oregon. She came back to Philadelphia, and I said, "Okay, we're living in Corvallis, Oregon, and you want to go to Philadelphia." I mean, I look at these trees and eat this salmon, you know, and my heart just turns over for Philadelphia, you know. No thanks. So that was hard to, you know, that pretty much broke us up.
So you're back in Dover.
Back in Clayton, actually.
In Clayton, yes.
So I was playing all around the places there, and then I decided that I should learn computers, because this is 1986, and I thought I would be left behind. So I got a job at Del Tech, and started teaching English again. So I was teaching, playing music. It was a pretty good life. And then the Dickies, with whom I was living, they rented a beach house. So with about 15 other people, I moved into the beach house. And the thing is, they all had jobs. They could only be there on the weekends. And I was there all the time. And so on the weekends, I would just like kind of go away because it was too noisy. But during the week, it was just me and Matt Brill. And Matt was taking a summer off from his from school before he went back to grad school, and he was on a hot dog diet, and all he ate was hot dogs.
So this is how I know you played at the beach a lot. I mean,
Oh, yeah, and
you were very popular down there. A lot of people that know you from Ocean City, Dewey Beach. I mean, not Ocean City, Rehoboth, Dewey.
I wrote a song called "Glory" when I made my first CD, which I had a cassette before that, and I loved the cassettes because it was so easy to record on cassette, and I could play with the recording, and I knew how to do it, and I didn't know, and for a while you couldn't make CDs at home.
Right. Yeah.
You had to get somebody to reproduce them, and it cost you $5,000. So, but here's Save the Bays on CD.
On cassette.
I'm on cassette, yeah. So I made this, and I made another cassette called Spiritual Beer, which was about a friend of mine, which was a concept album. And I had Spiritual Beer commercials on it. And the whole idea was getting a giggle from being high. And my friend in Sarasota was a painter named David Radke. He was a very successful painter. But he used to talk about spiritual matters all the time when we were smoking pot and drinking beer. And so he said, spiritual beer, you know. So a lot of the songs were kind of about that. And Bigfoot's Baby was on there. That was about that. But then when I came out with my first CD, the idea there was a song I wrote called Glory, which I was looking at a legacy, because I was sort of thinking about growing older and retiring or something. I don't know, because I never did. But I wanted to give advice to young musicians, you know, that kind of an idea. And so that was what that song was about. And some of that album was about that idea of legacy. I don't know where. Oh, I've lost my thread.
All right, so now you're in Clayton, and it's the what? It's the 80s, mid 80s, late 80s,
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah.
So bring us up to the.
Oh, what I was thinking about was I was king of Dewey Beach.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I was looking back and I was saying, oh, that was really nice, but everybody tells you that this isn't going to last, you know,
Yeah.
and be nice to the people on your way up, because you're going to meet them on the way down, you know, that kind of thing. And so here I was, because when I go around Dewey Beach, everybody, hey, grab me, you know, and I couldn't buy a drink, you know, I knew every bartender in town. It was fun.
You played at every place there.
I played every place.
Starboard.
Yeah, and it was when I was playing at the Rusty Rudder that I got hooked into doing Small Wonder, because these guys came down to the Rudder to eat, and I played for the cocktail people waiting for tables, and I entertained them, and I played solo. And they came up and they said, we would like you to play at the World's Fair. I said, yeah, sure. They said, it's in Knoxville, Tennessee. This was 1982, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Oh, okay, I'm backtracking, because this was before I went down to
Yeah,
Florida.
whatever. Yes.
Oh, okay,
This is
we're
the
going.
small. This is the Small Wonder story.
Yeah,
yes.
this is the Small Wonder story. So the Small Wonder story is those guys came and they said, we want you to play, but we can't pay you.
So who was this again?
These were two political guys from D.C.
But they were from Delaware.
No, they were political guys from D.C.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Do you know all the D.C. people go to
Right. Yeah.
Rehoboth?
Yeah.
And Dewey Beach.
Right.
So they were up there, and they were running the World's Fair, American Pavilion at the World's Fair. So they said, we can't pay you, but we'll get you a gig over at the Australian Pavilion, and they'll pay you. Okay. But, you know, I need money to get down there, blah, blah. So I went to the city of Wilmington, and McLaughlin was the mayor, and he used to come in and sing with me. But he says, we don't have any money, go to the state, because they just invented this new tourist bureau. Well, it's okay, good. So thank you. And I go down and I meet with Nathan Hayward, known as Nathan the Terrible, Pete DuPont's cousin, and he says, okay. He says, you write us a song called Small Wonder, and you feature all the things that we want you to feature in Delaware. And so I said, okay. So they sent me down on a bus. They paid for a nice motel, and I had a pretty good time, except I got censored when I sang about a guy who had a gigantic hama hama nuku nuku apua. Hawaiian song, perfectly good Hawaiian song. So anyway, the Small Wonder finally got in this Mel Bay book, and Mel Bay is god of guitar books, and Jerry Silverman was the high priest of folk guitar, a friend of Pete Seeger's, and he wrote this book.
Open it up.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't understand what your gesture meant. So here's Small Wonder in that book.
Can you play it for us now? This would be a good time.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
You want to play it at the end in case the people next door complain about the noise? We'll finish the interview and then we go
I'll
out
sing it
with
softly.
Okay, all right.
I think it's
All right, and then let's hear Small Wonder.
Okay, Small Wonder.
So
is a perfect.
that would explain why now. Nathan Hayward gave me a list of things that I should put in the song, because Michael was looking at the words and he says, "God, there's a lot of stuff that you never sing." And I said, "Well, they gave me a list." So we got Caesar Rodney was one of our greats. His race to Philadelphia made us the first state. Now NASCAR races on the Dover track, and Caesar's a statue with pigeons on his hat. I say, small wonder, small it's true. Small wonder, I love you. Being biggest ain't being best. In Delaware, you're different from all the rest. Now here's one that Nathan had me put. Come to Delaware and make sure not to miss the famous furniture at Winterton. Now, there's history galore and 4 racetracks, so get here quick, because there's no sales tax. I say, small one, and that's no sales tax. And then I used to sing that all over the place, and you get gigs in schools and churches that want to hear stuff like that. And I like the song, it's okay. But they had bumper stickers and T-shirts and it was the first song I wrote on the piano. And if you play piano, you know that if you go from C to D minor to E minor to D minor, you don't have to move your fingers. It's a beginner's song for the piano. So that's not too difficult for anybody. So then they had signs coming in from out of state that said, "Welcome to Delaware, Small Wonder." And then they changed the sign to, "Welcome to Delaware, home of tax-free shopping."
Yeah.
And I was crushed, so I wrote a more modern song. Shop, shop, shop till you drop. Shop until you're dizzy and your feet hollow stop. Shop until your credit card signs itself. Don't stop shopping till there's nothing on the shelves. Shop until you spastic through the buzzard lope. When you got plastic, you got hope. That's the quiet version. I did the quiet version for you.
Okay. All right, so let's see. Where are we in your career? We're in the mid 1980s.
I just backed up. Yeah. So now Dewey Beach, and then I moved up north and
with Locke and Linda, right? And Arden. That was the late, like 83, 84, 85.
That was back before Small Wonder.
That was before Small Wonder.
Because Linda helped me write Small Wonder, I think.
Oh, did she? I'll have to tag her too.
No, she's I was looking at her in this picture. This was smiling because, she's a nice person.
Yes, she is.
And this was when I was opening for the Pointer Sisters at Stone Balloon. I was scared to death. And Stevenson got me up there, and I was, the Pointer Sisters played for 45 minutes, jumped on their bus, and went off to Atlantic City. And he comes and he says, "They're gone." and there's like, I don't know how many people that place held.
Thousands.
It's like 1,000 people in there. And they're all going, and he says, "Crabmeat, get on and play another set." I said, "Okay." And then he started laughing. He says, Give it 20 minutes and let the sore heads clear out. And And so then I did, and we had a perfectly good time.
All right, so now let's keep moving along here chronologically.
So we're in the '90s, and
Yeah.
I'm up, and I decided that it was time to get a day job because I was broke and the music business wasn't going well, and so I wanted to teach in public schools, and they said you can't. You don't have a Delaware certification. I said I taught at Oregon State University, and they said no, you can't teach kids in high school. And I said that doesn't make any sense. They said, well, we make the rules. So I tried to talk my way around that. But there's some really mean people in that profession, I'll tell you. And so I went and I decided to bite the bullet and start back taking classes. So the first class I took was it was structure of English. Structure of English. And I realized the professor was really cute, and she was the assistant dean. And so I was fascinated. I liked the class and everything. So at the end of the semester, I got a B plus, which upset me. She should have given me an A, but so then she invited the whole class over to her house for a Christmas party after the class. So we go over, and I had made up a little tape of songs to give to her. So then she had a guitar. She had this beautiful Martin guitar that her ex-husband had given her. So then she sent me a tape of really, really great music that she had made and asked me out for New Year's. So I said, okay. So that's how I got my teaching certification.
You had to work for it.
I had to work for it. And then she dumped me and broke my heart, but I got my teaching certification. And I had an assistantship thing going, and people would say, oh, you got a really pretty good thing going here. How did you do that? And I said, you can't do it. And so when she dumped me, I wrote a song about her. It was winter and the wood smoke smell and the crackling of the fire. Your cats and your companions and the dancing of the wire beneath my nimble fingers as I fingered your guitar. A lady's perfect Martin in the double of high figures from your ex. And he was later the bass player in my band, but he was a lousy bass player. And so that bleep that. That's not nice.
That's right. So you're now teaching, and
so I got a job teaching
Yes.
at Middletown High for 4 years, and then I went insane because I was in a room about this size with 25 students, and for 5 hours at a stretch, I couldn't get out. I couldn't go to the bathroom, couldn't do nothing, and the telephone didn't work, and so I started to get panic attacks and went to a psychologist who put me on some drugs and got me out of it. And then at the end he says, you're okay, you're going to be okay. And he says, your whole problem is your job. So that was the end of that. Teaching in public schools is very, very difficult. But I see now I play at volunteer brewery in Middletown. I'm going to play out of this Friday from 6 to 9 with Slim Charles, and my old students show up. And the one guy says, the only thing I remember from high school is when you told us about Zanzibar and you sang this crazy song about Zanzibar. And he knew the national product of Zanzibar, and I didn't. I forgot it. But
So
he retained that.
So you played for kids too? You did
Oh, yeah,
Saint
yeah.
Bay?
Yeah, and the meat. Yeah, that's right.
And then
And so I thought, the people that I was living with earlier in Dover, Jeff and Ellen Dickey, Ellen worked for the state. She worked for Division of Natural Resources, and all of their buddies worked for the natural resources. So I got talking to them, and they said there was the Inland Bays Committee, which was concerned about Delaware's inland bays, Little Assawoman Bay, Indian River Bay, and
Delaware Bay. Yeah.
and Rehoboth Bay. No, the Delaware Bay's out here, see,
Right.
and none of they're inland bays because none of them opens directly into the Delaware Bay. They go out through the Indian River.
Right.
That's why they're inland bays, and why they have particular pollution problems, because they don't get as much mixture of ocean water in there. They're not that brackish.
They're not tidal. Tidal.
They are tidal, but not as much.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, they don't get the exchange, but they breed all kinds of birds and wildlife and seafood, and they're an asset, and they clean the water too. So I got involved with that, and I designed this coloring book, Stretch Save the Inland Bays, which when I was
Okay.
when I was teaching at the high school, I taught one Spanish class, a beginning Spanish class, as well as English. And when I did, I went down to Chiapas to study Spanish in the summer, and we translated it into Spanish. So I republished it in English and Spanish, and it's now bilingual, and it's going down to Panama with a bunch of students that might.
All right, so we don't have a lot of time. I'd like to talk about your writing career, and then I'd also like
Yeah.
to talk about you're the Delaware laureate. What am I thinking of?
Oh, I've gotten a couple of grants. I mean, a couple of fellowships as a folk musician. I'm an established fellow, a folk musician, folk art musician. Folk art music
I
is the
thought
way
you were
it is.
like I thought you won some kind of a yearly award where you were like poet laureate, but you were not a poet laureate. You were maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of like that. It's
Okay.
kind of like that. They gave me an award for being a distinguished folk musician
Okay, well that counts.
in Delaware.
And then also you were a writer. Tell us about your writing career.
Yeah, for 10 years I wrote for Out and About magazine, and it started out when I was in Dewey Beach, and Out and About was starting out, and I had written a couple of things for Fine Times,
I can see.
and yeah,
Hold that up.
they asked me to write. I wrote a couple of little things, and then they asked me to do a cover story, which I was really thrilled because one thing, it had a really nice cover.
Yes, it does.
And I got to know Mike Walsh, the sheriff, who I'd already met him in Denver one time because he was out there on a convention, and I was flying out to Montana. But he was a really nice guy. He used to have me on his television show
Oh yeah, the local access cable TV show.
Yeah, yeah, he would broadcast the races from Delaware Park. That's when he was a sheriff. And he would have me on. I would sing like "Shop Till You Drop" and stuff, because he doesn't care. He's a really jolly guy. So anyway, I interviewed him and other people for this, and then when I wrote for Out and About, I started out writing a beach column, and I was also writing a beach column for the Dover paper. So I would just write, you know, who was playing and what was going on at the Starboard and all those places. And then it expanded because I started writing other things. And eventually I became like Rick Mulrooney said I wrote about the oh Christ, I can't read it. It's some French word.
Hoi polloi, yeah.
No, I'm thinking Gestalt, but and anyway, what was happening?
Right.
What was happening in Delaware and nationally and worldwide with my own particular slant, and most always funny. But then I wrote about Geoffrey Chaucer and the Canterbury Tales. I wrote about William Butler Yeats and T.S. Eliot because I felt like it. And they had a really good editor, Carol Kipp, who worked with me. And then things didn't work so well. And I don't want to.
So what are you doing today?
Today?
I mean, what do you do now?
Well, I just had a nice. What do I do now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I tutor and teach English as a second language at the University of Delaware's English Language Institute 3 days a week. And this weekend I'm playing at the Volunteer Brewery with Slim Charles. And on July 7th, I think it is, it's a Saturday night, I'll be playing a family show at Lum's Pond. And then August 3rd.
Doesn't make any difference. By the time this goes on the video, it's going to be too late. You have any other questions? I didn't cut you off there.
Did you used to work with children? Did you do any work with children?
Yeah, I do. They'll probably call me up to play over at the children's. They have a couple of daycares in Claymont, and so I usually play there at two of them. They've had me there every summer for years, and then also down at the Bethany Beach Nature Center. Mm-hmm. She has me down. She called me up and had me reissue this.